Mani Padme Hum.
Shatakone yabuto. Madushini ganimashina. Nyoto yore. Tachimane.
Hello?
Hello, Garland Rinpoche.
Yes, yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we hear you very well.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche. Thank you so much for
Samare. Oh, fish. Don't you talk him? Yeah.
Oh, I will come. You started this one. Dharma.
Yes.
And then also I want to ask you.
Yes.
This one using.
Yes, 2 requests.
Yeah, this is long list was who? Is the one whole group or what? Because you saying this.
Yeah, this is family.
This family who? Which is the name? Which is her name? You asked me.
Recording in progress.
I thought I included in the name.
Yeah, you go.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Good morning.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, you go. You go and start. I will come.
Yes, sir.
Because I'll make sure this is okay. Remember, should it?
Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
So, not to delay, sir. Good morning, good morning.
건방야 포종산.
기가 정말 신나생각 그래서 전부다 되게
Oh, yeah, okay. So, I'm not going to let you. Oh, yeah, okay. 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 Oh, yeah, Yeshi, Yeshi. Oh, tenga, inga de, Yeshi. Oh ja, das, dann das mehr.
가만히 생각하지 이렇게.
Oh ja, danke. Ja.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Dele.
Oh ja, Katrina, that's all.
And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for your translation. Just to note,
Yeah.
we start that next Sunday begins daylight savings. And so our class next Monday will start at 9 a.m. Pacific instead of 8. So just make a note of that. And we'll begin with some prayers. The link is in the chat box.
To teacher and Tao, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, for destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher God, the Buddha and Tao, transcendent destroyer, Glorious Father, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you faced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who rise, then I bow. With pure bodies, formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, people of merit and qualities, vast as an ocean, purity, freeing from attachment through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom to love self. No holy field endowed with good qualities to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. The star, a mirage, flame in a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, seek different things as such. This merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeings through the protocols, and be delivered from the ocean of static existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon. Imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your true body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Tiram Guru
Bandalagani.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Adik Songen.
Boyara. Ya tabii bir. O te an Geshe chibu shiole sonle wa jujule. Te question do message chena ya. Pala tene jipa chimbo tars. Tele tene yu ji treju ba tele parjanam ji chimetens. O she son batars. Te question do message chena ya. Pena ngaju te ba kunjo somla nevele da pama seba la sobo chamebe le la sobo te question do nami so yu meba. Nami number mebe. Tunge seba meba tinde minju yebe le chi na asora. Te question do message chena ya. Pala tene chibu chibu. Oh da pechan shigdo. Pena mi pao lamga chilo doko kuma chakpa ta chi kale shida yodan chibu chibu yona. Ene mi pao chilo tene kondo da jiba meba chilo tebu chi ko teor do tu gres gora. Oh, dinner, she's water. Narado, some may be less of a let of Chabukadis and Nami, so you may be started your answer. The new castle. The question to message and the question to message and I. Palatine, Jibuchibutar, Spetilabudua. Palatine, you treasure, but tell a portion of the chimney. Oh, dinner, she's a better lapsara. Oh, dinner, she can't let the usual treasure, but tell a portion of the chimney. Garland, Tiba Miseba, Chamila Sobatezo Kangati, Nami Yomagoba, use them ya Trevor Chiba, the Carlton Yonto Wilsona. Chanju Sim, there are. Never do it today.
Yes.
Tasha. Tasha. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Tenicasser. Palatine, Jibus, Talatin, Carlton, Yigitra. That on that Chanju Simde. Simja Tamje, to make the Travashaku, yes, some Simjele Chabachi, Meba. Rana Shitandula to me, Mendobachi, in Shinjatella. There's Hamage. And it to me the trade on the other trade. Tashitsugi in some Tamje, Chabameba, that time yesterday. Dunga Koya Dunga Travachasa. The Yeshe Dunga and this nobody also saw on a chair to Sanje Jacoban toward Chanyam, Bechanju, some the Kiba, Rangicula, Yenasagora. And it's some Mebala so bad Tiba, Pama Sabala so what Tiba Kandachuna. Tea and then Nami, Jebuchawachima, Niasola came a guba. Roy used some Jenny Labuton and it the body tane. No more Chagadesagora. This was a the question to Mrs. Chana, Palatine, Jibushambuta. Garland, you to use them yet to Juba. Telepak Jenam Geshe meetings, Pawyer and Damba Langdor Janela Sushi to Son Gange. Go out to Mele Tower de Gay. Tarbada and Yasu to Mele Tower de Gay. Pawyer and Damba. And a kiddie lella to get to the courage and you similar. Jumba message, Jumba Chabu, the Titsumbayina. And then Yasu to Mele so one massage belek and use them yet. Nami Yong will go by Tadu with the Yeshe. Oh, this one would I.
So here, as the great Bodhisattva, Shantideva has stated in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, as though they pass through perils guarded by a hero, even those weighed down with dreadful wickedness will instantly be freed through having bodhicitta. Why do those who fear their sins not have recourse to it? So here, like this kind of example that is given, even is as someone who has created extremely egregious, heavy, non-virtuous actions that will bring about like almost inexhaustible ripening results, doing things like the 5 negativities of immediate retribution, the Dharma, the kind of harming the Dharma or the Buddha, the Sangha, and so forth. Even someone who has done those kinds of egregious actions, if you are to have bodhicitta, it says here, will be instantly freed. So it gives here first the example that if you had to, say, travel a path that was kind of dangerous, there were bandits and other dangers around, if you had some sort of a heroic figure, someone who could protect you from any of those kinds of fears, then you wouldn't have any worry about traversing that path. And so too, if you have committed in the past whatever sort of heinous, heavy karma, the 5 negativities of immediate retribution that will bring about this kind of unbearable suffering in the future, by giving rise to bodhicitta, they don't have to be experienced. We can, as it says here, be instantly freed or in a moment freed from from that. So by generating this kind of attitude of bodhicitta that says that I need to free all sentient beings without any kind of distinction between them, based upon the recognition that just like me, every other being has the desire for happiness and the desire not to suffer. So you're not creating any kind of distinction between them, but recognizing that all of these beings who are within samsara, you have an attitude that says, may I free them from samsara's suffering. May I myself become a Buddha, a being who has the ability to lead these beings out of their suffering, that has the kind of knowledge of what is to be adopted and abandoned. And so too, if one is able to generate this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, whatever sort of negativities one may have committed in the past, whatever kinds of almost inexhaustible ripening results they were to bring about, the 5 negativities of immediate retribution, killing one's father and mother and so forth, those are not, they don't have to be experienced, the kind of suffering that would naturally come from them. So those who are conscientious, or as I read in this translation, fear their sins, but have a sense of not wanting to experience those suffering, those ripening results of suffering, that have a kind of awareness, attitude of being conscientious. If they have that the fear of the sufferings of samsara, as well as that of other sentient beings, by generating this attitude of bodhicitta, they're instantly freed, or in a moment freed from the kinds of experiences of those negativities, as in they will not experience the full weight of those sufferings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the Tatunda Karisugosena. Thabkhe Shen Chebe Chanju Simsigura. Rale Shenda Simje Shen. Tungele Teata Tewato at Kashim Butsiget Sigura. O T. Samlu T. Wangani, Tibashibu Tandu Resura. Karisone Tibasa de Manchang Aran Society. Simjan Tene Tibasagura. Simjan Novachan, Sawachan Tibasagura. Tibamanshudi. Kadikyo Kandishilana, what in the Tibasayati. Chiso than Jane. And a shell Sawachabata. Oh, tended to Basagura. The shell Pensum because it's Chambayana and Tibetado Yore. The Dungarazu Tibetaya and the 2 Kundin Chisona, Simjalia, Sawapambata, Pembatuaki, Sambasambu, Chambata, Sawasawada, Chambata Sawa, or Kaze, Shukshawa, Combate Samje, and it Tibetayata, Roa, and it is Sonamia Payata, or take a Sheshuti, the Yin Samne. Namjungazu, Samlina Chisona, take a Shimbuke Sigmara. Con Namjina, Chatan, Chico, Chatan, Konduche, Tratan, the Kangasha. Any Aku church to the Antamuda Charge, Shendachi, Ochura. Then a panda peggy, in a one day, the Chisona made drainage, Chisol for Samlutan the Raleigh door. Condizina Rana, she told you to him in the Bachanja Ray, Samlutan, Tito, and Shembe, Samlutana. And then do Tedu, Kadu, Geshe, Kanga, Chili, Jura Yora, Chudura, or Tindation, Samlutandi. Then I do Namju Lavchana Yuanashi. Tani Simja Tamjala, Yeshin Nobule Alhapes. Tenjo to be somebody, show the chamber as the Bashos. The Simja does a sangma the chisel, Nadu Dodish and get to the Yeshin Nobule Alhaparesha, some Gora. Kades and it, Tazoleten, Sosogi, so love chamber Saya Yora. Kuranzo Karina, Tunganyangi, the Garazo Danda, or Garazo Leko, or Karina. This came out Richara. Koral ten and Garazo was social pendo you had. Chambada Zoa come the Tibataya, the Shaggy, you're there going to pay us of what did. Tication Bure, something under some good work. Ting under the Garazo the Rhine Tower, Shenda Tower. Chizonal Pata do Simjalia, Namjuki, Richard, Karchino, Kochaja, Davasha. It remembers the church in Mitum, the Captain, Laboratamu Chachora. The Panda Pingri, the Dangone churches, the Mazulegu Medua. Yan Ya, Commercial Chichigay, Chibabu Man, Chibabu Yoba, Yata the mother. Chizona Diri, Sanje Sunganashima. Titi Samu the Leg Madua, the Tipekachimbo, Tiladani Tiba. Topsimbutaya de Tira. The wood Topsimbutasa de Leva Shakwa Masune, Tinya Butelekidua, or this was a Tikashambore, somewhere Choju with under God and the Mati, Laveteba, Chaju sent the Pekashimbo in Bagazu, 탑대 시럽니 나네 탑대 군념도 전수대에 된다. 전수가 된다 임바. 어디인데 다든다. 심지어 탐지게 된도 와. 산제지 고반 토번 데벨로 로 딱베 셴지벨로디 베페 심부레 샤섬 다 딱베 셴지버 단다 남산치 마dunne 셴라 차와바야다 셴라 펜바투게게 아니 로 림지 장게 인삼사 로 테바다 삼바 콤바체네 산제지 고반 토버샤 대치도 아니 추ኝ게 인삼 무물루두게 숨베 어머런지 트메 추데 냥게 인삼테 테바샤 수수 삼루다 ane telia nyamleche rimye ne tosam konsola joginsam te tandalia chunyegisa kulu lekbar se dan ne sambar shos o de ya.
So here, the meaning of this verse, this attitude of bodhicitta that really exchanges self for others or gets rid of our preoccupation with self-interest and exchanges that for caring for the welfare of others. This attitude is extremely powerful in terms of purifying our negativities as well as accumulating a great deal of merit. If we think about why that is, it's because most of our negativities are incurred against other sentient beings, right? We do things that are harmful to others, that are violent or that are aggressive toward others. And so we accumulate those kinds of deeds in relation to other sentient beings as we go about in society. And so in order to purify those negativities, if we instead abandon harming other sentient beings, give rise to an attitude of wanting to benefit them as much as we are able to, we look at them with love and compassion and go about our life interacting with others with that kind of recognition that they want happiness and they don't want to suffer. May they have happiness, may they not have to suffer. Then this is going to be very powerful in terms of purifying our negativities toward others that we have incurred toward other sentient beings. So if we instead think that like, oh, well, Dharma isn't something that I practice in society while I'm going about in the world, and we allow ourselves to just have our regular attachment and anger and hatred and ignorance and so forth, and then we go before holy figures and sort of put our hands together and pray and whatnot, then we really got it wrong, right? If we think that the kind of Dharma practice is not about how we treat others, how we interact with others, then we're really missing the point. As it says, may I always cherish other sentient beings, seeing them as superior to a wish-fulfilling jewel. The way that we look at other sentient beings should be in such a way as we recognize that by treating them well, by treating them with love and compassion, we are able to get a result that is superior than to what a wish-fulfilling jewel could give us. We can accumulate a great deal of virtue. We can purify so many of our negativities. And really, we should come to see this attitude of bodhicitta as so important, in that if we just allow ourselves to have our regular afflictions and think that Dharma practice is something like to the side, it's almost as though, like, even though Buddhism doesn't espouse the idea of a creator, we're sort of believing in something that is like a creator, right? We're not taking accountability for ourselves and then just going before these figures with our hands pressed together. But I have been teaching verses from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life to remind us of the importance of really adopting this attitude of bodhicitta and carrying it out in our everyday interactions with others, right? This attitude in which we exchange our self-cherishing for cherishing others is not something that is instant, but is dependent upon our developing it, our cultivating it with intention, and slowly over time it will become a kind of unfabricated attitude of bodhicitta. But we should set our motivation here for listening to these teachings, thinking that for the sake of being able to benefit all sentient beings, I myself will become a Buddha. And in order to do that, I am going to listen to these teachings by Venerable Nagarjuna of the precious Garland, and then having heard them, put them into practice, try to actualize them within myself in order to really pursue this path for the benefit of all sentient beings. So maybe please, recalling the importance of bodhicitta, set a motivation for listening to the teachings.
Oh yeah. 당가지 솔로가 Tuju Riku Chikan Tamadimba.
Lare.
Oh, yeah, oh, to the Tala Yunde Chobar to said. Tala Yunde Chobar. So China Sugora. Raggy China, call Yunde, Yunde to show for the Sugora. China, or Kongara to Terimara. Susu Megachi in a cotillion, the Chion, Titun, Jede, and a tail of Shagra, Tikil of Sarana, some. And a Casara Chini uncle, Tabarato Shisha, and remember Soko. Suina Tadani, Chidanko, peasant China Shichana, Tadani, Simjan Tadani, Omaro, Jidel Tadani, Mado. Translated Yamubata, Shija, Tani Mado Mera, peasant China Shichana. The Simjan Kaga, Suina Chulu Meda, Randa Tawatuna, Metuna, Rixina, Missinada, Tikango Chibata Guara, Madochi Telecavaka Marto. Oh, the Lucas would. Oh, China, Suina, Yundechu, Kayana, Kay said, so that the church by the addition to Sunguda. Samlatan, so Kende Samlatas. Shanju made some Ranjo, Ranjo Tangan Shindu Chungchera. Shan Cardo, Tadera, Ajana Coca, Coca, Tita Lera. Shanju made that ditch you do get your Mara, Coco, you there, Corona, Cocora, and Azutiki Mara. Shanju made a $100, that Churki Kajira. Social Kare, do Yiri Messina Karisido. Titi Kaga question, any social joint in Yurdura. Social joint de Salamadana, social joint is joining a day in this Milia, Magasa del joint de Chena Kadara. Casete, Shensi Ras, something like Kadira, or the Indicasura. Shanju Meta, Ranjan Samla, Ranjan Tangish in the Chungjara. Tang but you need to buy Chungura, Tassam wood legora, or Tineshipa Mavis, etc. Rangi Mesa Susu Kawachina Chesu Randa Chora, during a Kawachi to outside somewhere. Then I yes, Yamara. Susu Tabar is near Karchi, Shenda Yabuchi, or Kudati, Yabudua Kurti, Kawatin Chigdoa, to some Chigidoa, but so Kungudo, some Zayan. There's some little mission that Kushab de Umura, Ayabuda. Because of Milican Carto, sausage in a Yadan is something go for the order. Or the Marches on Gudwa. Tala Yendanger Baras, this one. Tala, call us. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Chobache, Chudu, called so many. Oh, dear, Tadare. Tala Yendanger Baras, Ragged Tower Yenayati. Yunden Chogores, Kadu in a change you are Mares, or Tessunguda, Ya teach Lamna. Tanda di Chunga Bas, Tanda has a shade the Garshevers. Ishi saw the Yala de Shevora, Tanga Mambush the Tishebe Kavimba. Tanda Sunam gets so Sayatal draw the Ishi gets so sour, they say. So Saya Yala the red dress Samutana, she gets so sour, the red dress Samutana, Sunam gets so sour, Tisha the Yora, or Tishebe Kavi, yeah.
So then picking up in the text, we are going to be picking up with the last line of verse 268 in our version that says, but rather speak of even your enemies' good qualities. So here, normally, if we don't like someone, we don't speak of their good qualities, right? We don't even really see their good qualities. We are only willing to see their faults. So in worldly terms, we make these distinctions of, oh, these are my enemies or these are my friends. And when it's someone that you like, you are definitely going to see their good qualities, but not when it comes to your enemies, you only seem to see their faults. Well, in terms of Dharma, when we think of the idea of an enemy, it's really, there's no persons that are our enemies, but rather the enemies that we can speak of are our afflictions and the obscurations to omniscience. There's really no other enemy besides that. And so here, when we look out at others, we shouldn't be sort of looking for their faults, but rather seeing their qualities. even if it is someone that we don't like, to be able to praise their qualities when they are something that is worthy of praise is something we should do. As Joel Atisha has said, like, we should think about our own faults and not about the faults of others. We're trying to reduce our own faults. So here, if we don't have any kind of awareness of the faults that we have, we're not able to work on them to try to reduce them. But rather, we tend to look out at others, and we're really good at pointing out all of their faults. We don't see any in ourselves, however. But when it comes to, I mean, sometimes we might even take our own faults and see them as good qualities. We sort of are parading around as if it's something good. But here, we should try to, like, when it comes to our own mind, recognize our faults and try to purify them, try to rid ourselves of them. And although we, of course, should rejoice when we do things that are virtuous, we should do so in a way that doesn't have any kind of pride. We aren't arrogant about this. And again, we should mostly be looking for the good qualities of others. When we see that others are acting in ways that are positive, that they are being generous, or that they are being patient or ethical, and all of those things, when we see those qualities in others, this is what helps us engender respect for other sentient beings and really go around in a way that is respectful. And so here, as it says, we should, even in those that we don't like or are worldly, in worldly terms, are our enemies, we should speak of their good qualities, acknowledge their good qualities. Now here, this is the 14th of 25, this long list of the causes of the collection of wisdom. Prior to this, we had been talking about the kind of causes or the branches of the collection of merit. One needs to try to accumulate both the collection of merit and that of wisdom. And these are the kinds of things that one should think about or direct one's mind towards in order to gather those.
Oh yeah. 당가서 solo 그 주주버가 지간 당부더라. 내가 아바 메시아신 세더라. 내가 아바 메시아시스. 그래서 그래서는 저번부터 이나 최저가 저바지 리메드인데 그 가서 따외촌에 저바 연구라. 안지대게 지 내루샤는 지대배 저바 연구라. 진리만디인데 저바 연구라. 어떤데 값이거다. 주변 내가 보면 간단히 지겨 말해서라. 저바 시월치고는 야고지 그 삼루탄다. 최근 저번에 telej고 삼루탄다를 삼루탄다를 야고디 말들이 견도 데들이 셔로 티셔마도 코카 콜네네 잡든데 셔마. 지대 저번에 코치 셔고 했는데 용구라 만들고 있나. 티이나 그 개발처지 야고지 공조원도 마땅하셔 시와시 전에 결한들이 때문에 되던데 들어왔어. 야고제 바샤는 껴내 방어도 너한테 너한테 못 쳐버치고라. 딘디면도 왔을 때 야고지 봐. 잠바를 쩨외던데 셔 얼마서 담보는 걸 간단히 재미있게 그 삼제 다들이 간단히 골라고 삼나 말이로 안에 용하요 말. 어떤데 지겨 말해서도 야 제가 담보대. 어디지 람나.
So then, turning to the first line of 269, it says, do not attack what is vital to another, or sort of don't strike at the heart of others, the vital point. And here, when one is engaged in matters of debate, now this could be something like a debate over the view or things related to worldly affairs. I mean, there are going to be worldly matters that people will debate and try to understand what is the proper course of action or what is the way that things are. And in that kind of context, one shouldn't sort of strike or attack what is vital to another, as in debate in a way where you're really trying to cause harm to them. But rather, one should approach examining the way that they're thinking and pointing out, oh, well, this is not a good way of thinking, or this is an error. But do so in a way that is skillful, speaking from a place of love and compassion, not sort of debating or trying to harm the other party.
뭐야? 더들더라. 야, 녀심견이 링맥이셔라. 시간 입어들어. sambar ngemba chezene shangi kyola sobo tendeling meze shenam kidanga sedo ene semjene nyeba lingbar mecha se shenam jese shenam je nyeba lingbar mecha ti chigani ba do ti mai kashi nyemdo lakshan di do
Okay.
ane tani jese de tama tunjuba tamatera.
Mm.
Chuba susur takbarcha sedra. Chuba susur takbarcha. Tani je chuba susur takbarcha se. Susur nodri yena te takche tende che ko nora mano mano tinde yimba che ko de se garo mato. Ti chadang go wang tinde mandro che ti che wara. O tire ti se tene choje ba tati ko mare. O ne tanga jo sholu ka tunji go te de yara. tunji di shekdo. Ti kari shekdo sene. Niba kange shenda la kebe tado takchawa gire ta. Niba kange shenda la kebe tado takche chegure sewe. Tene kari shekdo se. Tene range yongba she. Tene kari nibe shenya dogbar zoyos. O ti kari shekore sene. Niba kange shenda la ya. Tene kebe meba roba tene range yongso. O Gen tinde shira, niba kange, shenda la, ane keba yina, ane chawa shenda tela mera tangyo amare sera. Tene yonso, pangshe se, shenji ya, shidi madila mera tangyo, mera sena ko kyonjo shiyate siwara. O, tawa mecha shenshi. Ane kare, niba shenyan doga cha, rangla niba yina shenda ke kyonjo rao tinde shigi yina, te tinde machi che, lapche chapko kore esumbiwara. Oh, ne. Rangi pangshin se, nibe se, sosu nibe wangi shenda tende shine kyonjo shene ko chi kyonjo ni chubari shine char dora. O tende pan doye tabshi chagore se, ya peye ke mandro chagore se, tisi udana. O tisi lana, sholu ka tunji pato sore.
No. So then beginning with the second line, and the second, third, and fourth lines are kind of split up in an odd way. So we'll read those all together. So it says, do not, again, this is 269. The first line being, do not attack what is vital to another, nor make statements with a negative attitude toward others. Instead, examine your own errors. So here, when it comes to those kinds of errors or faults in others, one shouldn't sort of attack them with statements of a negative kind of an attitude. Again, we should approach in a sort of straightforward, honest way, both our own mistakes or errors or faults in others. And we shouldn't, if we are pointing out some kind of a fault, do so in a really mean kind of a way, but rather we should have an honest assessment of our own and others' errors. And then beginning with 270, the verse reads, you should eliminate in yourself those faults that the wise always decry in others, and to the best of your ability, eliminate them in others as well. Now, here, in the commentary to this, it says that those things that are sort of worthy of criticism from the wise, one should strive to eliminate in oneself, right? We should try to get rid of those faults in our own continuum, and to the best of your ability, eliminate them in others as well. And this is really sort of doing so in a skillful way, not by being just openly critical to others. That can lead to just fighting about things, right? It's not actually going to be beneficial in terms of them eliminating that sort of fault, but to approach it in a way where they are actually likely to turn away from that rather than just like harsh criticism.
Oh yeah, taman solo ka tunyi dira. Oh ti karsi dosne shenji neba giwa las. Ta me shanda de solo neba chebe tinde yongura. Rangi pa solo neba mache chawa pangba ina ya. Na shanda su neba chebe tinde yongura. O titi ta soba komgura mado ane che lamlo dugu marwa che lamdo droya te soba komno mado che lamdo droya yo maris namjini shekto angazo yo shandal sawa pamba da pemba tuba te che res che nyibuti res chera ane te yo ala ya soba komgura da ase keran shandal neba machane shandal keran neba chenge yungura da ase gora titi soba komgura mado ane che lamdo droya yo maris soba makumda koltata lenche bene kakati chira soba konet ne sondora ne tachura one choba de yara Zakari Sundosina. Shenjin never give a loss. Shandagaralia, Rangi Pat so much and me too never chip a younger days or on dream a day you would acquire. Never give a Monjeleso Nicaria, Monjeleco, Tromigis, John Malay in subject. The Chibangone in it led the Giches, something around the dog in the young. Till this all that thing around him, I some. Less of it, debris, some tagri chanani, genetic tosa or Nota Sosara. Not the leg, the rangi less every song, Maracochi, teachers, Dimasoma, Dimasora. What in the leg, the Grichosa. TK Simbure. They under some township with 10 days over mother. Kashag lay residue any Nazo Lamne Digger. Kagaduan number Saba Yora. What is over you rig mouth that see it, this Yora. Said that the rigma Karan to see the ladies and spend Nugiora. Then it that what is teacher rigma was a leg server at a day we were so gigdoa. The Marwa lay in a coat Thunderbird to see the college Sanichura ladies. The lay in a coat Jota Yora. Trade against it down Jota Yora. Penangazo Nason another day later. Ladies and not my mother Degomendua, Yandro members and Kangachi, Television, Tardua. So could night at the lady, the ladies and none of a Degomaro could it Mugile, you are a triangle, you are a me, Karakas Adur. Mugile, and take it against you, take it against you, Jordan, you are. The ladies, it is on Jordan, maybe Sanduji. Tiran Chego, some look Tangua, in the Koziakashi. Number is lay Junde Kelly Messi, lay Junde Kemelin and number Chayamara. Number lay Kawasan and David, the other because and then to me and Kelangura. Oh, Tezut and the Sungara. Shangy never give a language, lay a con, Tommy Geshe. Conduce your Marisera. Conduce anything, Shiva Main Bendam, Yuchita, me, Tanduta to do some Jitera. So never send a policy chair to get Tagra and Santimato, Samutan to Umara. Tizulo said, that Chavachi and Nico Samutane, Kujutangi Shogara. Simply Kujutangi Chena, any area dress you are. Didn't have Juneshi Shash and any Shanda, she said, then she said, Pendoyamar, Joy, Shukshamudumare. Tunge Yanjo, Minjoar, Ragin Weber do. Oh, the Carsido Satunda, Shangira never give a la. No delay in table cons, let a Christian. Tell about Troy Lancer and Gimares, Troy Michisera. Trina, Chimarian, Tunga, Jurin Juve, Tunga Jumar, Patrona, George Chimayan, Tunga Jumia, Judy Saviora. Condo Jay Party loves to do that, George Chimatunga, Judy Saviora. Saba Comshana or a penny or any Kukanga Sosara. The Condo Chigdana. And a socially chick, Georgima, you are no lessa de ora. Oh, this would. Trina Chimaria, Tunga, Tunga Jurujue, Tunga Yang Jor. There are Tunga Yang Joal, said the Tavishan Pangmara. Tunga Yang Joar, Minjoar. Rangi Neba, then Meber Kios, Otter, Dinga Zutera. Umajabana let you go to Karsa. Oh, tell of combat, beaches soon never chasona. Oh, Colonel never shadows and the ledge park Captain Sigora. Church so teacher park at Captain Sigora. Tell of combat chasing dogums. And the Yamako should never scare you and I see Carcinity. Party legend, it never said it, Cesaro. Never said it, Cesar. That is Noeke Omara. Could you soon never scare the rank pan never standing, and never said, don't do United Pandoris to her. The new Omara. Tell a good business in the way. And a carriage upon never cigar. Teacher Tergo never did to me, send this also surround the shell Samlutana. Nelle Marchand Deore, Saba Comshan, that's all rata. Yeah. Teaching Dirgun, but send Delato de Pa, never said the lake. tunda yo ma res pajo me ji su ra me ji su kyo chima ya le me ge sa ben de bu yong go ya cha de ora ti che de ge ne ba de me ji den pa ro ya ne ge ji den pa ro le so so de wan de go ora de wan de go de dan ge wa ne pa ne le che de ni ma ma ba ne dong ye yong ya ju sa de go ora o ti de ti sam dang go do ti song go do tunda de o cho me ji se dong ye jo na me jo ora Niba meba de kese, this one, digere, Shangi never give a la, no legend de Bourbon, le dagger with Esra. Tela ne la pa tuji o marese. Titrena, let's send the lake to the Marco, Chimaya, Tung Injo, Chula Baby or Nese. Tunga young Mijuara, Sevechido, no le Masevich, Savacomna, Nete Juliduara. O Jisuda, Solga, Tujituni de Chilan.
No, no. So then here in the next verse, and again, Geshe-la's numbering is just slightly one ahead of ours. So this is in ours 271, and it says, "Do not be angry when others do harm, but realize that it is the effect of previous karma. Without causing any more suffering, illuminate your own faults." So here, when someone has harmed you or does you some sort of harm, and even if we are, say, trying to be practitioners and not go around causing others harm, it is possible that there will be those that have harm that will come and harm us. But if we are really Dharma practitioners, we need to use that opportunity to practice patience, right? If we respond in any other way, then we're not really taking the dharmic path. We're not really becoming a practitioner or using the kinds of skills that we should in order for our practice to manifest. So here, a real practitioner would recognize that when someone does you harm, it is the result of your previous karma. And by experiencing that harm or that hurt, then you are exhausting that karma that you had accumulated, that you had accrued in the past. And so here we need to sort of understand this in the proper kind of context. That when we experience some kind of harm, to accept that, well, I must have done something to have this kind of experience in the past. I must have created the karma. It allows you to then sort of let go of that, right? If instead we hold on to these things and think like, oh, the suffering, and we compound it by kind of focusing on it in that way. However, we need to understand this in the proper context. As there are, like, for example, new Buddhists in India, that are becoming Buddhists these days. And there are some that would say, look at those who are of a lower caste and say, oh, well, that's the result of your karma, right? So you are meant to suffer because of the karma that you created in the past as being a lower caste. Now, this is kind of using this idea of karma in a wrong way. Like, for example, when we get sick, our sickness is the result of karma that we have accumulated, right? But it isn't as though we then say, oh, well, I'm not going to treat this illness in any way because it's my karma. But rather we go and we seek out medical treatment to try to get rid of that sickness, right? So we can accept that an illness is the result of our previous karma, but that doesn't mean just sort of accepting that whatever is going to run its course. And so too, with something like, the caste system and injustice, to just say, well, oh, you're meant to suffer because that's the result of your previous karma. That's not really the way that we should think of this. But if we are trying to practice the Dharma, this means that we need to practice patience in the face of harm that is done to us. We don't want to act in the way that kind of like animals or other beings do, where our immediate reaction is to just retaliate, to act in kind. If we do so, then we're not able to transform our karma or look to the future, in the sense that, well, if we're able to bear with, to have patience, we exhaust this negative result, and we're creating a good karma rather than by retaliating, doing something in kind and harming the other. We're creating the karma for our future suffering. As it says here, without causing any more suffering, eliminate your own faults. So here, as Chandrakirti has said in the entry to the middle way, I won't get the verse quite exactly right, but say someone does you harm, if you are to retaliate against them, like, that would make sense if it were the case that could eliminate eliminate the original harm, right? But it's not as though when someone, say, hits you with a stick, by hitting them with a stick back, you get rid of that pain, right? You're actually instead adding to further pain. If you want to have happiness now, you bear with the kind of sufferings that are inflicted upon you. And this, again, by having patience, will bring you happiness in the present, a sort of calm and peace of mind, as well as in the future, because you aren't creating the causes of suffering, of continued suffering. So here, if we, it's really advising that we should not get angry. We should practice patience. We should use these opportunities to transform them, make them into the Dharma. If we do get angry, we're creating the causes for our own future suffering.
Oh yeah. That's all got to some day, ba. Oh, to some day, chicken tambuni de la gudwa. Chikarus dosna. Lela raw machipar. Shendalane. Pember dose. Oh, ngaju chimbere tawina sura pa robber shevina. Tange tare pa call robber chani chima kodia ngaju su chi robber chigre samsara tinde raw machi sura. Lela raw machipar. Shendalane pember dose. Pendor Karichiguna Chimbatangina, the Shenda, Shella Pendor, Robert Karichavina, teaching all Shella Pembares, this was a call Pengides, some Bashi, some of them, Taranga Colia, Robert in the Chimako Yanchichin, two Roberts and the Holiday, some such in the raw matches, or the land and land raw matches. Oh, Shella raw matches were Shendalane, Pember Jose, and the Chanju somebody Jenako Chimbatan, the Robertsena. Shella Pemba to Yisim do the mother. Ten Debu Joachima Lonjo, Yunguri Samsa, Titoguri Samsa, Tinder Samlochi Gomara. Yenda Namil Ramishibas. Number member Joachima, you at the Rachi Gomara. Pemba Bashi Sammato Yonto Gomara, Tisam Shukcha de Vara. Take go Sanjay go on to the churches and all us over today with mother. Tanga Chimate Lonjo Chimbucha with the Tit and the Chimbatan. Tanda Soba Comnachima Baby Dacha Boyabu with the Curious and Tinder Samutangi Omara, call Pemba Bashi. Tangarazo Tame Balia Ochara, Chibatana Chimalonjo and Guradasia, Chibatan Pendosora, Tindebushe Guyara. Oh, Soba Comnati with that, Chima Soba Magona Condo Sabaship in the Chigadasana, Namidishena Ale Titi Yungur, some Toma, Chig Lagurmato, Digo Marwa. And when it's doing a Namil Rom ever say, Lana Rom ever, Sendilla Lanche. Namil Rom ever to Nechibatan, Sabacom Pendo Karchin and teacher would Esogora, teacher Neke what the Luption Gora. The many also so Rawaji Cheneco, Churi do in a corridor the day Omare, Chicheneco Corridor Sketch Power of what is Shimatile, Travaset in the younger Samjang and Basamlocoine, he could church the Chimbatic Teori, the wedding Jara, oh, the Colon Rally. Yeah, oh, the lesson. Tunjute Sungi Chigan Tambuni derida. Lela Roa Masheba Shandalane, and they got a pember Jose, Ya teacher love, or the woman need the lotion. Oh, and a cardosina. Oh, to me chibu, na Geshe, Dewa, Londa, changes chess. Shulga Tunjute Suntamani dera. Take our sedosina. Shany Rala to me kibes. Shendaga Rala Tungaya, we have a cure of the Chonsona, or Tisos Chibuge, Tungango egg Tapsi or mother, Shenda Robert in the Yamdosale, you had in the Tapsi Maresera. Shenja Rala Tungaki Besse, Tungera Chibu, Nagbar, teaching Isra, Tangarajunia, the younger Shenda Sus never a chesona, or coaches Ranyam Doya. Because two teachers, Dr. Shenjo teaching, Cherutaya Samtangira, Tindeta Marasosa Karichin, this was about touch of the Shido Shenda, Reni Kashutan Maratada. Oh, Nikasara. Kawalisata. Oda. Oh, Shenji Rala Tungaki Besse, Tunga de Ranchibu, the younger Ramado, Shendalia, younger Rockbake Tini, Chito Shenda Tuchu Jomare. No, the way you Chonsona, Sagola so what Pusun so Chonsona, or Tirogba meet over the Shandalia, Yamdosa long chair or Esigora. Kevin Johnson, the sausage and teacher, 또 이제 중선 미션다 님도 살 취신 용도 망하랑고 삼사 든지 되요 말이서 그래. 되지. 아니 그 말에서. 야, 그래서. 너 현다 해지도 제버리자고. 어디봐도 질렀네 되기도. 야.
Yeah. So then, beginning with the first half of 272, it says, do what benefits others without expecting anything in return. So whatever one does in terms of being helpful to others, for a bodhisattva, just the thought, like, I benefited them, that itself is enough. They don't need to think about the kind of reward or result that will come from that. So here, for those who are really trying to practice in this way, when you are benefiting others, when you are doing generosity or any sort of way in which you are acting for the benefit of others, you should do so with this kind of thought. May this, other than this sort of attitude of may this go toward the cause of Buddhahood, there's not this holding on to an expectation of some kind of reward, or like, oh, I'm going to get lots of wealth in the future, or by being patient, I'm going to be very attractive in the future. For ordinary beings, we do teach about the kind of ripening results that come from generosity. You will have wealth and so forth. But if one is really trying to practice as like a bodhisattva, you should engage in those kind of beneficial actions toward others and be satisfied merely with that I benefited someone, not needing to have any kind of hope for return or some sort of ripening result to come from that. And by doing virtues in that way, they become extremely powerful. So then in the next half of the verse, it reads, endure your suffering alone, share your pleasures with beggars. And just one more thing, again, if our motivation is wrong, if our kind of attitude is misplaced, we can be doing things that might look like they are virtuous, positive actions, but they could actually lead to negative results if it's really just about our own kind of gain or profit from those. So here, then turning to this second half, endure your suffering alone. So when we experience some kind of suffering, we should try to bear with that without sort of expanding that suffering more, without dragging it into society and making it about like our side and their side, compounding and intensifying the kind of suffering and creating more sort of good suffering results from that. So when we are enduring some kind of suffering, we should do so in a way that doesn't spread that to others, that doesn't bring it into society and sort of make that larger. And then on the other hand, when we are experiencing good things, it says, and share your pleasures with beggars. So when we experience some kind of good, when we come into some kind of windfall or something, we should share that with others, the joy and good that we experience, as opposed to our suffering. We should try to expand that out.
야, 다 그말이지. 다 뜬지 봐. 솔로가 뜬지다. 어디 가르쳐도서는 근데 제시도 아까서래. 나도 동단답지 도어에 중선 남산 심심줘야지와라. 심줘야다. 야가를 때 중선 야 캠버싱하게 계셔라. 어떤데 지금 말에 가르쳐줘 두쳐줘서라 지달라. 그 가르쳐줘지와다시. 야 또서 말에 남산 두쳐줘서 근데 남주때 근데 지금 말해서라. 매체날 코코아서 야가 용조래 두개 용조래 삼사 잔디 담에 영향이어라. 대조값이 아니 수업아 고고래 님도 첨부체제 야구체제 티치하고 그래서 거라. 그 가르쳐서나 하이 표심 속배자 배선적지. 소수 벤조 표심 속배자 하이 벤조나 시배 쇼지 야구 표심 속배 쇼 차스나야. 대시라 간에 캠버시죠 말anga 제시죠 말에서라. 하이 표조 다 벤조 집어를 담녀다를 지내다 현다 가르 표심 속 가르쳐나야. 내 가시 가르쳐줘 남사배 시부질랩 수삼제네 배 남주 멘다체배 남주다 산 멘다라 차도요라 근데 지겨 말으시거라 하에 표조 표정 속에 그냥 캥반이도 메자시에서 뭐 캥반가 제시스로 당가까지 지려서 지지려서 내 현다도 통중시에다 계속 간거 용거라 나제 연의 현을 통주 용거라 등가제 지겨 말으시라 Any cara ida shindu uwayes. Ta kyobuchangema aujuna tabe kyobuchane saye tongye me pe ida na shi chasuna ya. Kube jane shumme jas. Kube chungne be kyobuchane sigura. Nyamgu sigura. Ma nyamni kube chungne ma nyamgu chimbu chungta saye me to. Nima chukbuye na kyobushoje chandoye na. Ti shumgyu yomar, lo shumgyu yomar esera. O taini kechuma susa. Kashe tinde udo. Tozu mandine be simshu chane anybody alliance che mebe sudu samlukoda. Tinde chigyo mara. Yanga yuwa dura. Ko me mesere shida ke saye tongye ni de desere ko mada shida kidran ke mara. O yanga chi chigisan di dura sam karene simshu ke gora. O tinde ke gore sora. O lai penjo la soba pusum soba. Ta de penjo roba. Ne penjo pusum soba. No, ani chi tamnya da pusum soba so karichon ina sigora. Koe punjo rabu yaga karichon ina. Ti chonga keba me chase. Ani kuba penjo nyamgula soba da chi tamme de ti mebe kuba mambu yongyora. Tende karichon sune lo shumni pe simshu chane. Ta kege chumba su samsa tende samgyo mares. Yangya ya laya samlu tangure simshu kene. No, koe nyingure nima cheta. Ganga shan dwere, sangma shan dwere, tiringelia ganga shan dwere, tonso samsachire mado, ganga shan dwere diara, ko yene kari yene kidwe se yomara. Ata ngeli chore samsa sore, susu simshu masha se uyara. Oh, tindimedo, ya o te chilabna. Oh, kube kane shumbe sas. Oh, te kechambura, koale, damida tos yora. 어때 연대 잡고 가셔줘 도셔줘 매 최근에 랍자들이라 레도와 이나 가서 대삼식 말아 칠로 그치 디만데 짱짱 소소 셈을 때도 용초에 줘라 디매버저 소소 삼을다네 소소 셈데 소소 가디네 기부처 냐르도 계시라 또즈 만데나 남산데 아니 미라고 예버스로 차라 미게 야부질라우스네 가셔줘서 미도 자질라우스 도쳐줘서네 소소 가도니데 밀라고 지탱게스르지라 그러니까 람나에 가라 개요마 암조 잡로 암조를 잡기 학바시라 암조절 학바나시 육샤선에 개요마라 어디 인디 가서라 디두니도 수수섭게 삼루탄조 차는 야도 버시 구여라 원해서야 돼 그디네 삼루탄 시버시 구여라 가제 누구 차나 디케바시다 요사래 나저번에 답변에 사쇼네 요마라 재미티체 메르죠 cap소와 우리가 점네 톱잡고자를 고지를 잡루요 말에 남산태제 배제 용주리 마도제 강변나치 요 삼텐데 저는 메르죠 보이sam겨라 예리 용샤라 다 가시 배심배제다 저야 angesi지 레서 마마 레서 지 배샤 예지 예마 예거여서 양자 파자 로맨더시다 가시 판도게 저런 파도 둘만데 요요 말아 근데 가시가 다케요 말에 Lumba Chukine, Tolu Kambule, Marisida. Lumba Chukisada, Sosuchiwa Kambuja Chumagita, Marisa. And do the Taradi Yaburis, Simpleci Yomaranga, Rabu Namjination today. Kagales is like a yo Morocco. Namjination house, Takapizum as a cook Camulant and there. Tai Jamjapara to Tangi, Tatan so as a Kamuka Dosha, Keomara. The moment Karchai said, those are the younger you are that in the Yomare. Kayene yisarchi dosharo. Sati samurtanjol pe kebadoga. Ne kashe pe tapike pinjachi yonje ne namile so chichi leso se simple che dinde yungudoa. Oh chicha ti kebashida usere. Ya tijila tiso.
So then, in the next verse, this is verse 273. And here, this is a really important sentiment expressed here in this verse. Like, we have a tendency to be very, like, too sensitive or too reactive, like easily made happy, easily made despondent. And so here it reads, even if you have the excellent conditions of a god, do not become inflated with conceit. Do not be discouraged even by poverty like that of a hungry ghost. So we have this tendency that when things go a little bit our way, we get kind of conceited, inflated, like, oh, this is so great. Or if there is something that goes slightly awry, that doesn't go our way, we get really discouraged, really despondent, like, oh, this is terrible. And so here we should try to not be in that way, even if, as this example says, you have the excellent conditions of a god. Do not become inflated with conceit. So if you meet with those kinds of good conditions, don't become prideful, arrogant. When we have that kind of attitude, it immediately breeds a sort of looking down upon others, a contempt for others. When things don't go our way, like in the second half of the verse, do not be discouraged even by poverty like that of a hungry ghost. So here it might be the case that we suddenly lose everything, that we had a really good situation and something goes slightly awry, and then we find ourselves in a situation of poverty, of decline, of a kind of ruin. And so really, when we think about what we need to survive as humans, it's not all that much, like having food and shelter and so forth, the very basics. But whatever kind of excellencies we might encounter within samsara, we shouldn't get so attached to them or sort of inflated with like a sense of self-importance. Whatever kind of praise we might encounter, whatever kind of good reputation, whatever kind of wealth and so forth, it can all be lost in an instant. And when that happens, when we encounter misfortune such as that, we shouldn't become sort of despondent, have our spirit broken by that. But actually, we could use this as an opportunity to see that, well, this is the nature of samsara. I mean, eventually within samsara, I'm going to have to give up everything that I have accumulated. And so this is like a preview of what is to come. As we face the fact that we are going to die and leave everything behind, we shouldn't, when we encounter misfortune, become so discouraged or depressed by it that we can't go on. So really, this is something, again, that is quite important, to have a sort of steadiness, evenness of mind in encountering whatever circumstances we might encounter. This is something that is extremely important. This is really the actual Dharma, right? Because we can go through the world with this sense of, oh, well, my problem's coming from this external thing or that external thing and so forth. But we can't eliminate all of those kinds of external factors, but rather what we have control over is our own mind and preserving and taking care of our mind. If we go through this the world in the way where we allow what others say or what others do to really affect us greatly, then we're basically like placing our mind, our well-being in the hands of others, under the control of others. And that's not a good place to be in. Instead, if we have this kind of attitude wherein we are able to not be so easily swayed by conditions, but rather have a kind of steadiness of our own mind and take care of that, then that is really where we find happiness. We can see this in many different examples of the way that people react to external circumstances. I mean, you can see this in the case of Tibet. I mean, it was lost to the Chinese. We lost that land, and there were some that were really no, I'm going to stay and fight, or no, I'm going to do anything to be able to get this kind of country or place back, and had that sort of attitude. Whereas there were others that were like, well, this is, this is karma. This is how it is. And instead of having that situation make them of broken spirits or despondent, they're actually like, moving throughout the world, spreading throughout the reaches of the world with laughter, with joy, with recognizing that this is just the way that things go. And so in even just one situation like that, we can see the difference of reaction, the way in which people's way of thinking really impacts their own minds. And so as opposed to being so sort of sensitive to or overly reactive to just a slight bit of good or a slight bit of bad, let alone larger ones of that, to have this sense that one's own mind and creating that steadiness of mind is most important. This is really what this verse is getting at, and it's quite important.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that really, young Geshe share, Tumse, not the share with one of you. You might to pay attention to me, my job, Conde, Lonia Donga, Sanjay Yangali, then Lonia Donga, Janis, called a tuition sorry, Jagalia. Tile Jawa Rinpoche da Penje Rinpoche che kanga tendu shure. Jagalia. Tidu zane ko Jawa Rinpoche te tochi tenda sarna tuwa peirwa Banaras ora. Banaras Sanskrit University tuwa pepche tidu nangbe de sen yora. University da nangbe peche labge professor. Tene Jagannath Ubadevas chi yore. Tene Tiripatis chi yore. Ngazu yuti pika yore da ngazu robo chi yore. Kuni ti professor sonza Jawa Rinpoche tu pe ti Yeshe ro ti tu. Ani pe ke mu ke shu shunge tu trobo shibichi sorere surgu yora. Ta chima ti lo kashe che liya Jawa Rinpoche pine pe shor che ya pe chi pe ro. Tambu pe ti pe ke bu yore chi ti ti wangja yore kanga triti yabu yore. 다 chima pedo yang kondzo chide jaga do chora ta kondzo semde shira chung sikdo ta ngema da be tinde ke mo sho be ko zum je kadi na na kimdo ko ta tande pe yo mare ta ti kam kare sho ne ke je kadi she ne sa kondzo semde chung sikyo re tene pe ge ndo ne kam sho de ngema na shere de sa kem ge a ke sa tinde be se o tinna shira 당님은 도구 중에 삼을 당하잖아요. 곰지 되기라. 디바 유샤 중사를 딱 가르쳐도 some 마음바 삼을 당 그러마도 다 디셔지 삼을 당에 동에 대서 아니 뭐한테 도르지만 곰도라. 삼을 챤다 거르게 거르마로 고통 마로 다 차르서 대 중서 딱 가르쳐도 삼을 당에만 하시지 되요라. 어디 소리지. 삼을 당조를 캐시라도 디 지랄나 되리야.
So, to just tell one more story. So, here, prior to the full Chinese invasion of Tibet and them falling to the Chinese, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama and some other figures from Tibet were invited to India for a celebration of the 2,500 years since the passing of the Buddha. And so, at that time, they went to Bodh Gaya. And His Holiness also went to Sarnath or Banaras, where there were various professors who taught in like Buddhist studies at those Indian universities. And so a number of these professors met His Holiness at that time. And of course, that was in the context of this celebration of 2,500 years since the passing of the Buddha. And they found that, of course, as we all know, that His Holiness was, smiling and laughing and joking and had this very jovial kind of an attitude. And so then after the Chinese invaded Tibet and Gyalwar Rinpoche, or His Holiness, was then coming to India, basically having lost his country, being the head of a country who had lost his country, these same professors were kind of concerned. They were thinking, well, how is he going to be now? I mean, what is his attitude going to be like? There's no way he could possibly be as he was before, thinking of all that is weighing upon him. And so then after His Holiness had come to India, these professors went and met him, and they found that contrary to their expectations, he was still smiling and laughing and still had that same kind of positive attitude. I mean, although of course there's pain at a loss of a country, His Holiness did not react as many of us would by getting depressed, by really sort of drawing into ourselves and allowing that feeling of our suffering to become overwhelming, such that we can't even think about anything else. Of course, there is sadness of the loss of a country, but to become despondent really closes you down about thinking about the future. And so this is just an example of like how someone like His Holiness is really able to preserve that happiness of spirit despite any conditions.
로야 됐어. 다른 아주 쇼로가 되게 된도들와 된도들이 있었죠. 대박 되게 가들에 다들 가르쳐도서나 대박 관계 랑들라서로 계시 냠바를 줄나야 랑게 돌라 따주지 텔레시마 미기워서 대 가르쳐 거래서나 그와 셴도도 줄어 셴게도도 줄어서라 템바 temba kange rangdola tadi karsudo shendu do juwe temba ma ngone temba de shenje tondale ngone de nezu de temba ma hore sera teni karsudo ngone nezu da mitumba sheje susu kebendo tende tene keje shegyo ma restanda de kebul sungora kebul lapse jagora mende temba kange rangdola Geshe nyambar juna yase temba chesu tangures Geshe jemba shene rangi Geshe di nyam dugu yuna kaya marese tembe chesu tangur mato rangi Geshe toye tudale me temba she ne gade gogo tanse ni dige yomarwa oti sungora ta tengsan do yin dinde shene no dugu mare ta ina ngune samrutana dinde shirwa temba kange rangde la Geshe nyambar juna yang rangi tangla ta chuji rangi tembe tunda de ta do kwa laptu bada zinto ko rese tele shema meke do so tele shema soso kesi nyamgre sam soso chi chigre samne temba maimbe chole adwati name chigyo mare sungora tunji tonga de tere do shende do jowe temba meba randa shen kanga temba tumba de mane shende tongle pengyo rangi tongle pengyo ra temba meba kange ran chiwe si nyamba jo chiwe da kesi nyamba jugune kebe kiben kora kesi di shondo yo na ya ke shekyo temba maimbe tondan ruji wa mari sera nyambar jurwa juna rangi tonla tatu chuji rangi tembe tonda de tatu zengu rese tele shendo medemba da shenla mibenshe roa o tende tondala rujo mara mibemba ne senshi kesi topja meba o so de o temba maimba de lamne soso kesi toba da shenda yagara chiungu ne te jesu ruji wa mari sera kesi topja maor mecha o se soso kesi topya tondala temba maimbe lamga rochu ne te doya yo mari sigora ta o te ya te chilana.
So then the next verse, and this comes in ours as verse 274, it says, "For your own sake, always speak the truth, even if it leads to your death or the loss of your sovereignty. Never speak in any other fashion." So here we again, this is advice to a king, and it is said that you should always speak the truth. That is the truth that is beneficial to others, right? So speaking the truth in a way that is both beneficial to oneself and others. And one shouldn't give that up in the service of some kind of temporary profit, or even if one is facing the risk of your own life or the sort of decline of your sovereignty, the loss of your sovereignty. One should always follow speaking the truth. So here, I think we can assess that maybe these days in the world, that's not the kind of stance that a lot of people are taking. But here, as Nagarjuna implores the king, one should always speak the truth. That, again, which is going to be beneficial to others and yourself. And one shouldn't stray from that, even at the thought of losing one's own life or the sovereignty of the kingdom. One shouldn't speak in ways that are non-beneficial, that are thinking about like cheating or deceiving others just for the sake of your own profit. Rather, one should speak in accordance with truth, even if it has a personal cost.
Oh yeah, that's all got to do it. Chike sungba teshin do jebe tishu takden jo so te na shi tembe che su ta te pe cholam te pe tu ta tu tembo chen chen gu re se tembo chen chen na je se rigu chi wara ene kebulia tene paden sa den do chema ine tambar jus o tende jin to ba ina ne kebu cheran tambu ne na sa den de den do chema jin gere se sama o te chen shek mar temba chang ma do 소소 개변을 따고 말해 temba 가리는 뒤통도 그래 삼사 천만 중에 그 초도 주바데 된다 요그래 해서 대면에 소소 개변을 따고 저 temba 임바데 멤버들 temba 임바서 된다 지기다는 내 자시하고 말어 왔고 된다 어디선가라 지대송바 대신도서 캐랑바다 템퍼처스 템퍼처데 소소 게시이네 쇼구이나 치월을 랩구이나 그래서 템바 마임베 돈다송교 말이셔라 제베 뜻이 딱 내서 대답이 처럼데 따도 템퍼처 전구레세 근데 zembayena 대다르잖아 내 개부처라데 사댕되네 앞에 세마 초도 줘봐 처음에 천진식 그래 차샤 그래 거기서 대군에 내가 템퍼처를 다세 뱃지 코라라들 따고 말했어요 근데 참만 제 재미있고 담바도 초도 줘봤는데 생기래서 미간가 차샤 그래서 근데 개부처 사댕도 세만에 담바를 줘봐 담자 템퍼를 줘야지 어디 담자 템퍼죠 전구레서 길랍제 전부 좀 겨라 개신진에 돈달이야 야 되질랑나
So here, turning to verse 275, and again, we are still in the list of these sort of causes for the collection of wisdom, and we're at the 24th of those. And it reads here, and this is really getting at it as an extension of speaking truthfully, to do so at all times and have that as like a kind of stable habit. So it says in 275, devote yourself always to the discipline of acting in accord with your statements. Glorious one, by that you will become supremely authoritative for the sake of the world. So a king in particular should always speak the truth and do so in a really sort of firm and kind of stable way. And by having that sort of discipline, you gain the reputation as someone who is sort of a valid authority, whose words you can trust and rely on. And so when one acts consistently in such a way as you are speaking the truth, following that kind of truth, then others will have a kind of confidence in what you say. Like, oh, this person isn't speaking from an interest in their own aims or their own profit, but rather they are thinking about the good. They are speaking in a way that accords with truth. And by so doing, glorious one, by that you will become supremely authoritative for the sake of the world, or at like a valid authoritative kind of source for the world.
그래서
This
야야 다들 좀 지셔야 지셔야 좀 다가서 그저래 내가 줄로 저도 그저 자주나도 봐야지래 제대로 사는 아데 뉴욕이야 따고 질렉송아 제대로 신내려네 점리 계지 조사지도 와 총도 조사도 와 담보니 계지 조사도 와 들려야 따가 집이 봐 들려야 가지고 대대도 가지고 기도시 저시는 왜 캔소리 단다 캠프스버를 단다 요래 공가지고 기도로 하나 다네셔 내가 냠도 좋아해 봐 따고 좋아해 근데 빼 강보도 빼야보도 와 근데 나한테 처음에는 아주 중성아 처음에는 니나 땡게도 미즈 강가 계속 nem바셔지 생겨지는 전부는 간데 야고 차그래 삼성아 니나 땡게도 이렇게 생겨 그래서는 정상이 코란서 초지에는 되게 나보들 까버려서 셔도 야 가가서 대셔라 라고 말아 그 누구지 요 말아 딱 저기 생기장 되는 초더라 어디나 계속 강가 뭐네 nem바 생겨지나 먼저 배배 전다들 또 생겨지라고 그래 따요 말해 삼성 죄송아 이게 콜라네 니는리아 계속 생겨게 pompu chimbuche kena pe yaboredo asigda ba ta ko samna pompu chimbuche pe chebuche tindrechi as saisar again kare hale ar tinal tindrechi ke bala hale kare ko samlo de kagare ne samlo choashinda sikera tindrechi다 디서르지래 티인데 딱 그게 차샤서면도 차샤서를 지는 건데 전부를 깨져를 시에 뭐에 내서 덴바생게지네 강가게 건좀 먼저 제 토고 말아 전부를 깨질려는 강가 덴바셔서 요 말을 지나 초티 지디 가반도서다 거의 나고르세서는 나고르시그래 나우도 까우르스네 까부르시그래 얘는 가가시 되그래 딘도시 때때 초치게 요 말을 샤샤 요 말아 어디 소리 정도 디내시 개부들 럽셔자요라 그때 얘는 저런 덴바장자 가와도나 계시쇼나 딘도따기오면 덴바데 덴바나 라고르시그라 아니 세먼지 도그라 했단다 Jamli Jajin, Chama Jangaso Mare. Taas Koran Wang Chichu Pashi, Sushi Meadow, Revacha Sayamare, Wanga Kayamare. What did on the chance on Taras? Yeah.
So, just to tell a little story from my own experience related to this idea of the importance of speaking truthfully and acting and really following after the truth. In 1980, I went to New York for I believe it was the UN General Assembly, and was there with the the former abbot of Tashi Lumbu. He's still here, a student of mine from Ladakh. And as we were sort of going through these various buildings, I had this sort of feeling that arose in me. If all of these people who were here, like the assembly of the various leaders and representatives of the world, were all speaking truthfully, right? We're acting or like speaking in accordance with the way that things are. We're actually being truthful. How different our world would be, right? We live in a world where there are very few that we can take as being like valid in terms of what they say, being truthful and following through on that. Instead, it seems to be like one person will say, well, this thing is black, and another person will say, well, no, that's white. And they both sort of sit in their own camps, not moving from their way of thinking, not able to accept like a common kind of a truth. And so for Khenso Rinpoche, I think when he was going through this area, we had a chance to speak a little bit about Tibet and so forth. But there's a kind of this body ends up being ineffectual in part because, as Khenso Rinpoche realized and pointed out, people are not speaking truthfully. If we had an assembly of countries and world leaders and so forth who were speaking truthfully, who were following the truth, it would be a very different world that we would be in, right? But in the world, those who represent countries and represent their interests and so forth, basically we don't have any kind of authorities in the sense of those that speak truthfully and follow that out. Again, people seem to be sort of living in their own realities or willfully speaking against the truth. And so this verse about this particular advice to the king made me think about my own experience there back in the 80s and in the UN General Assembly, and this feeling of like, wow, we would be in a different world if everybody were speaking truthfully.
Oh, yeah, totally. Tadi Solga Tunju. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Chuni Tado Tamjela Labor Tadi Jabatas. Oh, Gabachantini Kaduina. Tanda Kadu touch in a taxi labor, some way about ended now. And then when it ran the toll touch you such a dog with the Esangora. Chuni Tado Tamjela Labor Tadi Jabata. The Yanda Chishin Tensi, and then when there's some time, when near to the Temple Karina Tia was a Hakosona, and the Shangi Chi Lavada Tendelia, Taju Mares, Temple Coranton Road, etc. Shangi Timin Job and Jersey, Shanla Kajitin, oh, stick a dead as any cool Lavana she shared in the matter. So, touch you to what's called till some tendent on it. Oh, Tembakari, Moyne Karati, Abuchi, Hako, and it, Jaguar. Oh, Jitindita, Javuchusura, Tadu Lando Gene, Tamjalangundo, and a room, Karima, Yabuchi, Taja, Taja, and Yanda, but Chitawa should do Tandangone de Hakosuna, Sigbe, and then Shandia, Tigo Marita, Shanley Kaji treat in this Yoma. Shangy Samja Denge Chunaya, Telechasha Yomare, Shanlia, Labalam, the mother of Rangi Karitaja. Shangy Tangme Joa Suda, Shangy Tangme, Shangy Gajited and Shangy want the Madua, touch she would esor. Oh, Tichilamna, and it dear Tama, she saw him by what you should say, you stangati, Sosara, Tibado, or Tichilam.
So then in the next verse, in 276, and this is actually the 25th of that list of 25, and so the verse reads then, In all cases, you should act after first thoroughly examining the situation. By correctly seeing things as they are, do not become dependent upon others. So here, particularly for a king, whatever action you are going to take, you should examine well to come to an understanding of what the situation is. Looking at the points of, well, what should we do, what is suitable to do, what is not suitable to do, and having examined well, then one should take up that action. By having that kind of correct seeing things as they are, having examined the situation with your own logic and reasoning, and recognizing what is suitable, what is not a suitable action, and so forth, then proceed. And so here, where it says, "Do not become dependent upon others," this is really talking about not sort of looking to others to influence you, or not being sort of falling under the sway of others, but rather by using your own reasoning, examination to determine the correct course of action, not falling sway to the views of others.
Oh yeah. 방아저데 당마에네 초사발라 팽여가를 좀 맞을 때 시에도 수남다의 시기 초사발 스타르도와 어들다 팽여가를 좀 그래 전제 주버리 주서를 다들 먹었어요. 그만둬서 다들이야. 그래서 어제서 다 주버 초사발라 팽여 중에 주지. 초사는 팽여가를 좀 그래 티시에도 드모에 연대가요를 초사발 때는 수남대 시기 초사발 공도세발 때는 뒷낚시 제발이나 내 드모에 연대가 좀 그래서 네 개발자기 연대 이수장같이 좀 그래서 지다 용해 전능가요를 네 개발이야 메다 용하지 이수장가요래서 기변답지 팽여답지 진짜요 뒤장도 접시기도 또 뒤는 당부도 시에거나 드모에 연대가 좀 그래서 왜냐면 당부도 가려서나 오야 저들다 그래 최래 계시 대화 당하세 최래 계시 대화 최나시 손남대 시기做那些 최단 틈바다 근데 계시 장바이나 봐 내 최래 계시대 대화 연구래 계시 지속고란 때보다 시화다 봐 야기한도로 다 가리네티 연구하라 나로 때문에 네 저주에는 연구만도 자 최래 계시 대화요 최나시 틈바 손남대 시기做的 틈바 장부도 템바도 틈바시니 계시를 대화 연구를 해셔라 제 당부들 해셔라 최제배 계시 대화 연구를 개부고랑 최다 틈바 미말라티나 시제파 전주체베나 대화 연구를 해시셔 니바데 가르스나 네 초남권도 잡아야 라르 자신 중이야. 초권도네 초다 좀 개부처한테 계시 장바에나 년자 신부 초 정말 겹그래 해서거라. 년자 겹그래 해서야. 저 개자 신부 차서는 그 톡에 가 집부게를 줘라. 들리듯이 그래. 가셔르디. 라르네 시세도 다든다. 시동그 빼면서 야부쳐 슈티도 저간 그게 과외가 지켜가다. 어디네 다 시동 연구를 해서 된다더래. 이번에 초남권도 잡아야 라르 다시 중결신에서 이바데티를 해서라. 아니 다 근데서 이바데서 상계제 템발을 잡아대다 대체서 초남권도 년다 상계 템바스 년다 템바스 년다 내말 정보도 템바 챌린지를 나서서 년다 침부하고 그래서라. 뒤치래 숨바디 가려운 거래서나 럼보 남자권도 되어서 럼보 상막에 배 뒤편주던 게더라셔라. 상막 그 샵에서 되어래 정보 템바스에서 와 초당 템바 시소다 템바 장비에서 단도 럼보 상고 상막 샤샤 그래. 정보 마전에 가셔가 되게 말했는데 나로 요자용 거라. 럼보 남자권도 되어서 개볼려 그 샵식으로 그것이 그래서라. 숨바디라 야 알레티버스 시시나 숨대지자 나도 와이래 야
So then we turn to the next sort of topic heading in this outline. We don't need to get too detailed into this, but this turns then to the way that these benefits of accumulating merit come about. So it's going to have these two topics of these 5 sort of qualities, and then in particular these 25 other qualities that come from accumulating merit and wisdom. And so the first of these comes in the first line of 277, where it says, "Through the Dharma, your kingdom will be happy." So if you rule in accordance with the Dharma, in accordance with honesty and truthfulness and so forth, this will lead to happiness in society based upon there being that kind of proper conduct and upholding goodness within one's people. So here, if one rules with the Dharma, as in according to the kind of advice of the Dharma, this will lead to happiness for the people. And then continuing into the next 2 lines, it says, "The vast canopy of your fame will spread in all directions." So here, one who, again, a king or a ruler who acts truthfully, who acts in accordance with the Dharma, their fame will spread, sort of like a vast canopy. We can think about, above thrones and so forth, this kind of decorative item. But the sort of reputation or fame of a ruler who leads in such a way will spread in all directions, again, acting honestly with thoughts of the greater good of society and so forth. When one has that kind of honest rule, that leads to, there can be discussion, but there's not going to be this dispute and debate. As comes in the next line, it says, "And ministers will bow to you." Again, if one leads with the truth first, acting honestly, speaking honestly, and so forth, the kind of opportunity for there to be that sort of fighting among ministers and misunderstanding and so forth, it leads to an unhappy kind of a government. Maybe those ministers who don't have respect. However, when a king leads with honesty, leads in the Dharma, then ministers will bow to you.
Oh yeah. 당한 주대로 다 가서. 솔가 뒤주 땡고 들어와. 너 뒤주 땡고 돼. 그 가서도 치외견에 마와데 선배견에 용서해지서라. 네 대단히네 치와에 대다도 천주지. 다치다네 그 예시도 다도 진제대 말와. 대대지른가 그 된대게요 말이니 맞지 샤네 줘야돼. 대대지는 들 예시도 야부장고를 해야 된다로. 된다도 대 야부장면에 저랑 신대 야부지 저 심말라. 얘네 들어서데 뭐 대현대부도 대화민비래서. 대선자들 상무당의 예시도 장부도 된바 최다 템버셔제 장고래서 대승고라. 치외견에 마와데 선배견에 용서시래서 선부셔대 견데 용요리 치긴데 빼망보래서. 대단히네서 선배견 용요조래 대조 치긴도 주고요. 그래서 치외 선배견도 저 대조에 그 치외견을 한 두고요. 그래서 대단히네 치와예서 대외 따도 쳐줘서 어디까지서도서는 그래 춘대에서 춘대라 코르도 아니베 최단 준비래가 정부 tempo 제베네 텔 코르도 강가 상마 마부 되네 차샤게 마부다 코르 마부 연구래서라 네 럼보 남자군도 되버리를 럼보도 상마게 구십시고래서라 묘도 쳐줘발라 그와네서 네 랑게 르라 네바 라서보 어다테 쳐줘고래서 네베렌델 겨와네서 팀바쳐라 메게와게 저알아서 근데 저기 오마레스 계시장 백업을 해놨은 거라 랑게 르라 네발라서고 치외견도 마주베면 소소르게 내가 지금 남자라서 망보여라 우다에서 저 껍질 만드나 치외견으로 와서 좀 만들었으나 내가 그래 매배서 치외견에 마와데 선배견 용서시 일어나서 선배견 도저 그 치킨을 좋아하시 그래서 Zawe Lubata, Zao Tropa to the young Gogotani, Gulocinian say that in the younger Zawe Lubata. Negative Kangba that the Zukanga Shivachin, Sanjay Jirete, Sam Jabal, so Bam Jabal, so Shivikan to Dosigra, Negative Bata. And the Kase, Takase, Yam Mambu Sayel, so Matribachunia, Chicken to Dura, Kala Sayed, some baking roye. At the Sada Madibada Matriba Second and chicken to Dura. Oh, teacher, some baking to the chicken to do this substitute resort. Some baking to do but the Danini, chicken to Jura. Yuba Tevena, or the same to the chicken to do Yuba Tevena. Tado choose the Tado desiring de la. Tado Danga Mares, the Shigora, Tado Danga Mares, somebody David Rindiliatine, Shana Pembada, Tonda Tumbada, Choda Tube Chawaya Wazana, Sendilla Ranshin Yiga Le Pen, Nijik then Shiman to do that, Joa Sambola, the Yatet and Dembanashi, then your person so well so what in the younger days, dear Shigdwa, what is Langa?
So here then in the next verse, verse 278, this really comes with the last line of the verse above, but it says, the causes of death are numerous, and those that sustain life are few, and even they can cause death. Therefore, always practice the Dharma. So here, in the fact that he's advising a king, Nagarjuna is really saying you aren't going to have this rule forever, right? Nothing is permanent, your own life, your sovereignty, and so forth. And so, therefore, recognizing that impermanence, one should act well. It should act virtuously according to the Dharma. Now, here again, surrounding oneself with ministers who have a kind of grounding in the Dharma, and if one acts as a king by following the truth, by following the Dharma, then those kinds of ministers and so forth will bow down to you, will have respect for you, and look up to you. But here one should recognize that no matter what kind of authority or power you have, whatever it might be is not permanent. So recognizing such, one should always act in and govern in particular in accordance with virtue. So here it is the case, as it says in this verse, that the causes of death are numerous, right? There are many things that can lead to our destruction, to our demise. And here in the verse, it describes, or in the commentary to it, continuing with the verse where it says, the causes of death are numerous, and those that sustain life are few, and even they can cause death. Therefore, always practice the Dharma. So it is the case that there are many things that can lead to our death. There are many different causes, and even the things that are supposed to keep us alive or be beneficial to us can become causes of death. In the commentary, it talks here about like friends and family deceiving you, or you know, you could be in a house that is your shelter but is then collapsed on you. And we see, you know, for example, people being bombed, and the places that should be their shelter then become their tombs. And things like food, the food that we eat, if improper, could lead to our death. And so recognizing that all of these factors mean that we aren't going to be here forever. This is really an encouragement to the king to recognize that it is important then to always follow the Dharma.
Oh, yeah, that is. First, look at Keshuba. Okay, that choose an answer. You didn't go that down ye last. Should that to be Geshe Jamborina? You didn't some of the Kevuran ye last or Yamder and the Jua Kala was so sendele. Randa, Chiso, some table young grace or Tinny Rishi, don't be lost. Oh, Taga Rishi in a Karsoda or Sangbuda. Sangbuda take chop by the ace, or Tinda Tinti by the ace. Sanship the Sangbuda take chop by the ace, or Tinyabude. Tinti the ace at Sira. Oh, ya teach them.
So then the next verse in ours 279, if in this way you always practice Dharma, the contentment that will arise in you and in the world will be abundant. So here it's not just personally beneficial, but it is beneficial to both ourselves and others, the world, when one practices the Dharma. And so it brings happiness to oneself and others, and therefore one should always try to practice the Dharma.
뭐야 다듯이 당가서 나이나네 시바된 것도 이제 토모에 연대 시 연구를 시바디 시여라 그 가르쳐도 솔로가 어디를 솔로가 계시던 시간 탐마들을 시죠 최제 대회 니로서 최단 틈바셔에나 니 코나 니 기부 코그레 셈바라 대화를 세다 네 니 세드사 대화 제제 야고지 니 세드 갈하라를 시요를 때마도 담에도 시삼다나 니 코마고니 니 세드사 졸하라 제시마드 소용거라 대화 담바다도 주르스 티카시도스나 파르네바 제나니 메오시세 다 세와 제나세와다 셴레 세와 제데 최근 메팅바지니 세와 제데라 셴레시 마두세 파르네바 제나니 메오시 게데세나야 니 세베이나야 시고다 메데와세 파르네바 마체베 아니 자연 직바 메베세 술라 네바 마체나 수다 메팅바메나 셈키부제 니쿠데 셈베레 최제 대화 당니 로지 대화를 세바다도 요로서 니쿠에 네티레 니 야부지 코 니 세드 야부지 세르스 김바도 다치 신나바케나 초과를 쇼데나니 니 쿠데 야부마고 아니 세드사 야고 셈 쫄라라 다야 가르쳐고나 삼티 용거라 디치부도 말았다 센시르시 라라마다 삼루 숙첨부컨데 땅이나 아니 근데 양니 쿠마고 용다 숙첨부 삼루 숙첨부 땅이 되나 디 삼루 셈그 숙디 숙첨부는 니도 쿠보다 셈들로 숙춘중 바차고도 나와 매바 알아지 다가시 세션에는 꼭 걸리 니고 그 종무시다 세션에는 니고 정말 가르쳐라 숙첨부 내가 지나 개와지나 가르치나 어디지 지지서 숙첨부처럼 그 셈경 알데 니 먹고지 대셔도 대대 망부용구라 니 그만 어떻게 지셔라 티체 시바디셔라 내가 와들 대반념도 랍잖아 나바테라 어디 랑게 땅이 쨈메베 내가라 랑게 땅이 쨈메베 름다자 대화톱사 랑게 땅이 쨈메베 름다자 대화톱사 삼바닥베 나게 땅이 쨈메나 세우라 소소 쨈메바셔야 우체제 그 쇼다 틈바셔제 메시게기나 쨈메베 아니 거래 멜람다자 대화토스 니 기부체 멜람데 야부탄 거래서 통해 아니 쇼람 베버자오스 다ton다 추 다템바체나 텐레케체 요레세 오레르와티 추등 원에 템바체나 아니 셈데스기 호마라 니바 케바르제 연데 닝아 중원에스 어다 티질라 투무기 연데도 저거래 다 케바르체기 양 연데 니스생아 연구스티 원에 시기도 야
So then for the fourth of these five sort of common benefits, it then comes in the first half of verse 280. Through the practices, you will sleep happily and will awaken happily. So here, if we have our mind in accordance with the Dharma, kind of pacified and so forth, and particularly if we are not harming others, right? We're not going around causing hurt to others, but we're living our lives in accordance with the Dharma, then we will sleep happily and we will wake up happily. Like we know that when when our mind is disturbed, whether it is disturbed by thoughts of harming others or we have harmed others, it becomes hard for us to sleep at all. And if we do sleep, when we wake up, immediately again, our mind is disturbed, sort of thinking about those things like, oh, I'm going to do this, or oh, this might happen. If we don't hurt others, if we don't go around causing that kind of harm, then we are less likely ourselves to sort of be harmed. But when we do engage in such harmful actions, like we're going to have that constant kind of worry. Like we maybe are able to go to sleep and then we wake up worried again. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to harm this person? And it could be whatever kind of thought, actually, when we are trying to sleep, having a really intense or like rigid sort of thinking, whether it is even something virtuous, like if we're kind of really holding tightly, like, oh, I have to do this virtuous thing, even that kind of intensity of mind can make it quite difficult to sleep. But here in particular, having those kinds of actions or thoughts that are harmful to others really disturbs us. By practicing the Dharma, by living our lives in accordance with the Dharma, we will fall asleep happily, and we will be able to wake up happily. And then the next half of this verse, which encompasses the fifth of these common qualities, then says, because your inner nature will be without defect, even your dreams will be happy. So here, if again, we act in accordance with the Dharma, we will have even happy dreams that come, being that we aren't without any sort of worry about the defects that we have engaged in, even your dreams will be happy.
야, 다 가요. 다 됐어. 야, 다 니시장에 지시도 개발도 연대 니시장에 양해가 그래서. 뒤는 내다 방아지 마시는 것도. 당부대 현다 뭐 방아지 연구라 장거 잡고지. 다 파마시슈 당부들 가르쳐. 파마시슈 롤렌다세. 소소 파마리아 셰프지슈에데 조제 연구대에서 거라. 최대 좀 배치는 그 파마디 셰프지그라. tension basera tindeche najo church de mashi tinde tin suchetine marshe bane kadin cheshure de maso de tinde chigdo timbere pamar sesho lolenda rigi zo yarim dus rigi zo da legen genro zo kenge chiora odi kale kapte ge to zolia ku shepche orese ku chizo genro chimbu kiti chiora ne lonje lecture是到的老这里啊，那老这的，是到特别去过的是，那些是到的是把当，现在全部都要当是的，七个家他们没有去，七个家没买呀，七组没去，他们没有去，东北七毛是个，七个家不买呀，那七，这不听的没有，七个家不了呗，那他们。主要没东北情况啊，点吧，全部买吧，东北情况啊，当然是那有那些的。就是这些把这些，呢，还有我们你同那些，我的朋友的些的，就是讲你的的，现在有什么的？呀，就是这些吧的，还有我们你同那些啊。还有不你他们呢？那搞起来，这种这样，三万的，现在了，要不他嘛是叫我去买了，还有不加钱了，说今天给是的嘛的，三万几是，对，今天确定就是他确定不了的呢，收入个叫什么的多，朋友开吧的生意，朋友今天要的是。他们的事情了，说吧，就是确定通过钱呢，忙用的，就什么买呢，今天上用过嘛的，要提不的，提不的去了呢。就我的老本嘛老本啊，他们来晒过来说吧，事情做出来吧，些的，自己做了呀，忍不住些，让给老师，来些看到嘛多没吧，他大概晒了说吧，来把些吧的。学吧公吧的，学吧动画的，清讲不毛的，先这边他们是看见，那不是东北青毛的，点吧的对手是东北青毛啊，就那苗不开， So, oh, Tonetta, do ya Lawaki? Kiwachima, that Latame, Kiala Soba, or in the Paying good is a danger. Don't do it, Mount Daughter, teach election. So look at Kajikasum Tichilan.
So then turning to the kind of particular or specific then of these 25 qualities that will arise. We don't need to list out each one individually, but beginning with verse 281, it reads, earnestly serve your parents and respect the principles of your lineage. Use your resources well, have fortitude and be generous, and speak gently without divisiveness. And it'll continue into the next verse. So here, earnestly serve your parents. The parents particularly are considered especially kind, in particular our mothers. The mother is considered to be the being who has been most kind to us. And this is one of the ways in which we develop our mind is by contemplating that great kindness. And then one should show respect to the principles of your lineage, those elders and older practitioners. One should serve them with respect. And then one should use your resources well, have fortitude, and be generous. So here, using resources well means doing so in a way where it's not mixed with any kind of naturally non-virtuous activities and so forth. And one's words should be gentle, creating not division between others, but rather creating harmony. One should speak in such a way as helps bring others together. And one should, again, have fortitude, generosity, speak without divisiveness, and continuing then into 282, and practice the discipline of truth. By doing these in this one life, you will become king of the gods and be a godly king even now. Therefore, devote yourself always to this kind of Dharma. So here, again, really sort of listing the benefits, but also encouraging the king to practice the Dharma and to do so in a way that has this kind of discipline of truth. And by doing so, one will become like a godly king even now, have this kind of type of comportment that others respect, and in the future as well experience those kinds of good results.
Oh, yeah. I did it. Tata model Chibatana Sobati Lodge. There's a shagura. The shady Tandil Tobacco. Karshiwarasna. And the Chimbersha Mena and Sunam Sayati Yungumarbesi. Chimbati Longjum Chimbusha Chimbata, the vacation Budavesa. And it Mena and Sunam Sosai Meribas and a Sigora. Chimbersha Mena. And then Sunam gets also Mijuram Yamnase. She'll have you better. Oh, this Chimbercha Mena. Sunam gets up a station beside you or Telelabasai or Estetangora. She'll have you a petty check shaking is a the order shaking is ora. Just you give Shiba the Rasholoka. She would some young cassetta needed to some Chimbawes. And Chimba used some tongue jiggy, Sunam dollar chad me person. Oh, that Chimbatan will have been Chamba Kumbi and the pay Sunamanga Saturdays on Gora. Oh, dress it on dress took what okay. She would choose some young. She would choose some young cassetta. She would choose some leisure, she said, that's also the shit. Until she would choose some young cassetta. Dinner kilo reservation as a kilo Mambudu Visera. Or Tinde some young. She would choose a kilo choose to Visera, Church. I think any some young dress and shogi dress, Kalatan, Yangul dress, Kalatan. Subject to the two choose by Jam Dam the subject. Nindes or Tindes and Chimbatan in Asura. To Sumunga. She was a Sumia cassette and needed to some chimbers. Shogi and Yangoja Konda about the two Sumbo Chimbatana. And the Mepe Mambo Tabgira. 미치만 못 하그래. 이 잠바 유섬 탕지게 그 손님 가져 사그래서 손님 자신부 사그라 니마 딱 버리실 텐데 되나 짐바당 되나 근데 잠배섬 돼 섬제 탐제를 봐 잠배섬 대화다 트레이너서 봐 대화다 트레이너서 봐와 동해다 트레이너서 봐 잠바다 인지 삼루로 텐데지 아끼네 공부이나 시고라 잠바 유섬 탕지게 손님 달라 차르메 벼세 유섬제 공나야 로 주주 통도제는가 잠배섬비 아버지 공부에나 심지어 탐제 대화단 대나와서 지마론 덴버 주진 덴버 다서 삼사 삼루 아버지 주 전부시 땅에 있네 기타인식을 해서 손은 망아사 그래서 다른 아주 준비를 진짜 전에 배kä승부 손은 사그를 삼기라 lon주 시부시 땅에서 근데 소소 샘게 잠바 공부해도 소소 샘을 좋아나야 된다 어 근데 시면 텔레점 타이 망아사 그래서 잠바 유섬 탕제게 손님 달라 차르메 벼스 그 차야 냠으로 동그 차야 냠으로 배 덴도 제야 거라요 말해서시도 제투스라 제투게 주 주세 제세에는 별시어라 킬로 레스르치어라 킬로 레스르 셔야시어라 세계시어라 그래서 주주 하세 또 봐, 니가래. 니가 뭐라 통해 말다. 주스 시들이 소아세. 제 축기 제 추아 제추라 송 또베 자주 니가래. 자주 tel라 최면나 장 주주의 최면담에 대해서 얘기하셔라. 근데 지우스 숨게가 지우스 순내제에서도 그 숨게탐바 근데는 아닌데 저네 칼라쇼게다 이거 건다 땅이나 시고라 지우스 숨게가서다 니리 숨지 뭐에 아니 심지에 대화다 된데 잠바 요즘에 공부하데 수능제 차르메 베스티 펜셔와 예수도 어디 질랍사는 데서라 야 솔가 개시대 야
So here, then the next verse, 283, the question arises, well, you say that by engaging in practices like, for example, generosity, you create a great accumulation of merit. But what if you don't have anything to give? You don't have objects with which to be materially generous. So you say generosity is so important, but what if you don't have anything to give? Well, in this next verse, 283, it says, giving the food of 300 stew pots every day, 3 times a day, cannot compare to even a part of the merit of just a short moment of love. So here, if one were to engage in a kind of great donation of food, like say giving 300 stew pots, and it has here in Gyaltsabje's commentary a kind of explanation that each of those pots is a large vessel container could take like 10 kilos of rice, right? So imagine this incredible volume of food, complete with all kinds of different vegetables, like 60 different vegetables. If one were to make up 300 stew pots every day, 3 times a day, you would be able to provide for the needs of many humans, right? You could provide food for many thousands, probably with that amount of food that you're cooking, and giving that kind of donation 3 times a day. That is not comparable to even a part of the merit of just a short moment of love. So here, if one generates a sincere attitude of love, thinking, may they have happiness, or may they be free from suffering, that kind of attitude in a like really genuine way, even for just a moment, surpasses the kind of benefits that come from such a vast material offering of food. It can't compare, right? So if we imagine making all of this food, all of these 300 huge stew pots with 10 kilos of rice made enough food to feed thousands, and doing that 3 times a day and so forth, that would be incredibly beneficial. But even if one doesn't have such materials to give, the kind of merit that one creates through just a short moment of love is of greater benefit than even such a kind of extensive, vast, materially generous offering.
Oh yeah, that is it also. Oh,
So we are out of time here for today, so we will stop there for today.
yeah, thank you. Good.
Thank you, Genla. Tuchiche.
Yeah.
And thank you, Katrina, for your
Yeah,
your
yes.
translations. And just a reminder for people online that next week the class will start at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, we'll finish with some dedications.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and the spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerables be tormentingly stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Iram Guru Ranamana Kamniyataya.
Amen.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Yeah.
Tuche na gelam.
Oh yeah. Oh, welcome. Yeah. But,